And you are live, my dear.
Right. Excellent. So I've got that turned down. That one's silent as well, just in case. Rosie, hi.
Oh,
Yeah, we're just sort of getting ready at the moment.
Oh, right.
Welcome.
Yes, I see.
So I'm just going to do a bit of cutting. This is a block for the new print, so I just thought I'd get on with that until a few people showed up.
Headphones.
Right, you haven't got any headphones.
No, which means I can't hear a thing.
Right, Ben has just got to run away and get some headphones apparently. Oh, 6 people here, hi. We've just got a technical glitch because Ben has discovered he hasn't got any headphones, so he can't hear anything. And our internet is running a little bit slow, so please don't think I'm ignoring you, but there's like a 20-second delay. So you type something and then I can't see it, can't respond to it for about 20 seconds. So apologies for that. Hello, hi. Hi from America and Beckenham. Hi Mark, hi. So yeah, tonight I've got some prints to show you, woodblock prints to talk about, and you can see here I've started work on a block for the series of films. So we've been doing some filming and we're about, I think, 6 films in. You'll get them 3 times a week. So I've already started sort of cutting blocks here. Oh, thunder and lightning in North Yorkshire. Yeah, we've had a bit of rain. We're waiting on the thunder and lightning. So this block here, if I just show you the drawing. There's my drawing. So the block that I'm working on is the turf of the hills in the foreground here. You can maybe see there. That's what I'm cutting at the moment. Hi Marion from the Netherlands. Welcome. So I'm going to be showing cutting, but I'm using a Hangito knife, and at the moment I'm cutting the outline of my block here, and this blue line is carbon. I've used carbon paper to get my design onto the wood here, and so I'm just working with that at the moment, and I just thought I'd do a little bit of this until we kind of officially get started, and then I'm going to show some prints. But like I said, if you've got lino questions as well, feel free, and ask away if there's anything that you want to know about the new series. So you can see how I'm holding this in my fist and I'm actually pulling to make the cut. So when I cut, the knife is actually sort of coming towards me to make the cut, and I'm using the tip of my knife. And I think my questions are frozen, Ben, so you'll have to do the questions. I think my questions are frozen, so you'll have to feed me if there are any.
Have you got Isabel?
Yes.
Well, I haven't got any others.
Right, okay, that's fine, as long as I know where I am. Okay. So I'm making a series of little straight cuts down here around the outline. And hi Brenda, and hello Karen from glamorous Los Angeles. That always sounds so impressive, compared to Winslow and Buckinghamshire at least. So you can see with this woodblock how I'm just, rather than clearing out all the wood, I'm just clearing out a channel around it. So really different from lino cut, where you have to clean out the whole of the wood. So just a little channel around it. And hi Steve and Angie, welcome. So now we're getting a few more people watching. I just thought I would talk through some of my prints, some early prints and later Japanese woodblock prints, so you can kind of see what I do with the process. So I've got some here that I brought down earlier. But do feel free to ask questions while I'm doing this. Happy to answer questions. So let's just put that to one side. So I thought I'd start at the beginning. So I thought I'd show you the two, hi Odette and hello Zandra, hi. So here is one of my first ever prints. Now,
Japanese woodblock prints.
Japanese woodblock prints, yeah, that's a good point from Ben. I was already doing lino cut. I just put this on a piece of board so that I can hold it up a little bit. So when I went to learn about this in Japan, I'd signed up to go and do a residency in Awaji in Japan, and I knew nothing about Japanese woodblock printing. So it was a real baptism of fire. Let me move that a bit closer so you can see it a bit better. I'm going to get Ben to show it. There we go. So it's a real baptism of fire, and the deal was that it was really scary because you had to go there for, I think we had 8 weeks, and at the end of 8 weeks you had to leave behind 3 copies, 3 prints from 3 different designs for exhibition. So you had to produce, you had to design 3 prints and then make 3 prints from those blocks. So that was one of them. Oh, hi George, hi, everybody showing up. And this was another one. I'm just going to turn it around. Thank you, Ben. So where I was in Japan was very rural, and where I was staying, it was all farming land. So I wanted to do something that was very much to do with the local area. So these are persimmon fruit. I don't know if you call them persimmons in America, but Sharon fruit. And they were just coming into season when I arrived in Awaji. And by the time I did this print and was showing it, they'd really ripened and been harvested, but it was the rainy season as well when I was there, so I really wanted it to be kind of about the location. So yeah, hi, lots of people arriving. So this was my first go at Japanese woodblock printing, and the registration is a bit weird, and it was really experimental, and I cannot tell
Thank you, Alice.
How difficult it was to get these prints done while I was there, because I was rubbish. I was so rubbish at Japanese woodblock when I arrived. I sent all these examples back to Ben and they were all pretty awful. So I did manage it in the end. I did manage to get 3 prints of each design. There was another design, but I haven't got one to show you of that. So I did get that done. So that's like the beginning. Hi Diana, and hi Bill. And then after that, I kind of started going out, trying sort of experiments and doing larger prints. This is much later on, but just to show you a slightly bigger print. Thank you. There we go. So this is a slightly bigger one. And I can hide behind that, you can't even see me anymore. Hi Christine. And so you can see here, I'm actually working quite large and playing a bit more with kind of texture and stuff like that. And the idea of the painted mark. So this is actually a woodblock cut out to look like it's been done with a pen, or a brush rather. And when I went back to Japan in 2013 to do a sort of mid-career residency, and that was one of the things we kind of looked at, was the idea that you could make like impulsive marks and things with Japanese woodblock.
Robert would like to know about the depth of cut from a hangito.
Yeah, just the tip of the hangito. I probably go down about 2 mil, something like that. Really not deep. You don't need to clear away deep with it. So about 2 mil I go down. So with this system, this is still a multi-block print. So here I've got different blocks for each area. So if you are new to Japanese woodblock, what you look for are the hard edges, because you can do shadings, you can do these like soft bleeds of colour. You see how the colours go from kind of light to dark across them. That can all be done on one block, but as soon as you've got a hard edge, like between these two grasses, you need a different wood block for that. And also here on the cherry trees, you can see these little zigzaggy bits. That's a different block. And so working larger was quite exciting. And this is, I think I cut this one into birch plywood. So one of the films that we've just made is looking at all sorts of different wood that you can use to print with. So this one was actually done on birch plywood. So the block that I was showing you earlier, which I was cutting, so for those of you who tuned in at the start, I was doing a little bit of cutting. This is Sheena, which is a soft, is it lime family? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, lime family, and it's a nice soft wood to cut, and it's much easier than the birch wood to cut. So that's what I would normally use, but for this big boy, I went over to using birch ply, but it's still multi-block, so no reduction going on there. But I thought I would show you one that has got reduction in it. So here's another big one. And hello, Peter. Got my lovely co-host from Ask an Artist hanging in there. Okay. So Glynis wants to know, how did I manage to place my damp paper with such a large print? The trick, if you are using large pieces of paper, is to get your damp piece of paper and roll it up, and then you hold it like a roll and you position it and you put your fingers down and you let go, and the whole thing unrolls onto the woodblock. If you want to see me printing, I think there's a YouTube video of me printing a massive picture of the Isle of Wight, which was over a metre across, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I've rolled up the paper and I put it down, and the whole thing very theatrically unrolls into place. Yeah, Peter's looking forward to recording new episodes this week. Yeah, we're doing more Ask an Artist this week, so yeah, that's kind of easier just doing sound. When you have to do video as well, you have to look at my hot shiny face. So we'll be doing that later. So this one, yeah, is a reduction, but it's not like a reduction like I would do for a lino block, because it's watercolours. So if you've ever painted with watercolours, you know if you just put colour on colour, it goes very muddy very quickly, especially if you've got different colours, one on top of the other. So this is a multi-block reduction. So areas like this area where there's lots of leaves, the leaf area I can do as a reduction because it's all shades of green. So I can basically reduction print all the foliage. Likewise, I can do that for the rhododendron, and then also the trunks of the trees. So there are maybe, I would think probably about 6 or 7 different blocks here, all of which I've done reduction cutting into to create this print. So it's still a multi-block process, but I'm combining the two methods. So with Japanese woodblock especially, and you'll see in the films, there's many layers. Yeah, oh, Claire likes our Ask an Artist podcast too. Thank you, Claire, that's really kind. Yeah, and Peter, by the way, Peter Keegan's painting, he's doing Zoom classes painting as well, so do check out my co-host Peter Keegan's painting, his Zoom events. Just give him a little shout out there. And so those are kind of large ones, and I should say that those ones are done on Western paper. I wasn't using washi paper for those. That last one that I showed you is actually done on Rosa Spina paper that I would use for doing lino cut. and I hadn't really sort of established a supply of good washi paper at that stage, so I wasn't using it, which is not the case now. But let me just show you this one here. So this print, and if Ben could really hold it close up, I was playing very much with the idea of texture. So I don't know if you can see, but it's almost pixelated. It's very grainy. This one, it's called Private Woods. It's a sort of a rather nice wood that's local to us, and it's private and you can't get in it. So I was only able to look at it over the fence. But maybe you can see it. The printing is almost like fast film. It's very granular. And what I've done here is I've used, I'm just trying to work out what this paper is. I think this is Fabriano again. So Western paper still. And I've coated it with size. So I've made up a solution of, oh yeah, Odette, I'll be with you in a sec. I've made up a solution of animal glue and alum, called it's dosa is the name in Japanese, a size, and I've put technically too much size on this paper because the size makes the paper less absorbent, and if you make it really unabsorbent then you have to sort of smash the paint through it to get the colour onto the paper, and it's that smashing the paint through the oversized paper that gives you this kind of pixelated, grainy treatment there. So I was, you know, sort of fairly early on, I was fooling about with different finishes, but I was still using Western paper. So Odette is asking, do you need a heavyweight paper for woodblock? No, you don't really. It's just personal taste. I would say if you're learning, then I would say heavier weight papers are easier to handle physically because they're less likely. When you've got damp paper, you need to be really careful when you start out that the paper doesn't like slump into any of the cutaway areas. So if I go back to, actually no, let me find a different block to show you. If I show you this block here. So here's woodblock that I have used earlier, so you can see the paint. And if you're just starting out, it's really easy when you're laying your paper down onto the wood for it to kind of slump into the channels where you've cut away, where the excess paint is lying, and make the paper dirty. So the thinner your paper, the flimsier your paper, the easier it is for it to kind of get grubby marks on. But the better you get, the more you do it, the more practiced you get at handling the paper, the less relevant that is. I use my sort of go-to paper now is Shiramini washi. I mean, when I started doing this, I was working with Western paper because it was really difficult to get washi. I mean, you could, but it was kind of tricky. But these days it's much easier. There are all sorts of washi supplies coming out of Japan now. And now I use Shiramini roll from Origami Factory, and I think that's about 90 grams. I couldn't swear to it, but I think it's in the 90 gram region. And that works an absolute treat. So I'll show you some of that.
It's got a further question about
oh, right, okay, sorry.
Sizing.
Yes, is the printmaking paper is this printmaking that I sized? Right, okay, so the printmaking paper, let's get that one out of the way, I'll explain that one in a minute. This paper is paper that I have sized. It's Fabriano Rosa Spina, which I would use on my printing press for printing lino. And in order to get this special effect that I wanted, I have deliberately sized it. With washi papers for Japanese woodblock, some are sized, some are not. Some need additional sizing, but the sample pack from Origami that I was showing in the Lino with Laura series, and the stuff I was printing on in the multi-block Lino series, and the stuff that I'm going to use for this series, that's all sized and ready to go. I do talk about sizing in my book, which shows you how to do it. And that book is, you can get it from bookmakers. That's not the right word, is it? You can't get it from...
While you're putting a bet on a horse.
Yeah, sorry about that. You can get it from booksellers called Making Japanese Woodblock Prints, and I do talk about sizing there. So it's kind of just lots of experimenting with paper when you start doing Japanese woodblock printing. So I would really suggest, if you're not familiar with washi paper, there are lots of suppliers do sample packs. I mean, there's not, Awagami do one, but there are loads of others. I think Lawrence's do a sample pack. I think Intaglio do a sample pack. And it's a good idea to get that and just do lots of experiments and find one that you like. Right, what kinds of woods can you use? MDF, no, don't use that because it's a really wet process. And if you soak MDF, it's just going to swell. And that's not good. This morning we did the film about wood, and I'm talking about all different woods. But basically, you can use pretty much anything. I would, if you're having trouble sourcing wood, then I would go down to the wood. If you've got I don't know what you'd call them, timber merchants, I would call them. Go to your timber merchant, your wood shop, and look at their plywoods. It's possible that they might have a plywood that you can use that's softer than birch. That's what we would use. I mean, you're in South America, so I would try. I mean, the beauty of a plywood is, let me just get that out of the way, is its construction. So it's made of layers, and the layers are laid at 90 degrees to each other. So the wood is incredibly stable, and it comes in sheets. So ply is, it's actually much easier to use than solid wood because it doesn't stretch and cup and crack and things like that. So I would go to, and that applies if you're having trouble getting hold of like artist's sheen ply, I would go and talk to your local wood yard and try and find a plywood substitute, and if possible a softish wood. I mean, this is Ben's area.
Birch ply is okay as long as your tools are really sharp.
Yeah, it's some plywoods are much harder than this because it's lime family, it's nice and soft, so it's easy to use.
So Zandra wants to know about vegetarian sizing, and we just don't have any experience really of that.
Oh, well, we do actually. Vegetarian
fantastic.
sizing. Good. Vegetarian sizing, yeah, absolutely. You can use that we were shown in Japan using a seaweed substitute. Is that agar agar? I think it's called. And if you use a vegetable gelatin instead of an animal glue, and that's, you know, I can totally understand why you'd want to do that, you probably need to double the quantity for the vegetable substitute because it's not going to be as strong as the animal glue. So if you go, there are recipes on the internet, there's one in my book, and there are various recipes for dosa. So what I would suggest you do is you make up a little batch at the same strength as the recipe, and you test a few bits of paper and then expect to have to increase that strength, because the thing about sizing is it depends on the batch of glue that you're using, on the weather, on the season, all that kind of thing. It's kind of very sensitive, so you might need to play around a bit. Yeah, furniture grade plywood works, yes. Yeah, I mean, basically any wood that's not been varnished or coated, you can probably use. Some will work better than others, but what you absolutely mustn't have is any wood that's been varnished or coated. And if you've been in the habit of doing Western woodblock or using wood as a substitute for lino and you've been giving it a coat of PVA and stuff to stabilise it. Don't do that, because with Japanese woodblock printing, it depends on you need the wood to absorb water, and that's going to let you print, because it's a very wet process. When we get onto printing, we'll see that. So that's that question answered. So let me go.
So poor Yasmin was so keen to use her paper, her sample pack, that she broke her ankle.
What? I missed that. You broke your ankle.
I hope you get better soon.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. It was like I had visions of you running to get the post.
Are the two things related?
Things connected? Yeah. No, that is a sad story. So I shouldn't be laughing. No, I am sympathetic and I'm really sorry about that. Yeah, so to go back to these, I think I better move on from that. Let me show you another little bit of an experiment. So now I'm using washi, and this print is on the Bamboo Select paper. So this is on, it's Awagami's Bamboo Select paper from the sample pack, and it's a combination print. So this is a mixture of a lino cut and a Japanese woodblock. So the background there that you're looking at is all Japanese woodblock, and then the honesty and the grasses, that's a lino cut. And the I don't know if it shows, but there's actually a bit of glitter going on as well in the seed heads there. So I did that with.
To see if I can show them that.
Yeah, do a little bit of wobbling about. Have you managed that?
I don't know.
We'll have to have a special effect next time. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little bit of silvery ink in there that's making it glitter slightly. So one of the things that I want to show in this series of films is how to do a bokashi, this bleed of colour. You see I've got a blue shading up at the top and a yellow shading and an orange shading. So getting that bleed of colour smooth and sort of no hard edges or anything, it's quite tricky, and that's something that I really want to look at. Was the glitter mica powder? Says Glenn. No, it wasn't. It was lino ink. But mica, yeah, you can use mica, and I've got some mica knocking around. That's something that I should talk about on film. I've got like a whole sort of child's pot of different coloured micas, and you can use them in printing very effectively with Japanese woodblock, and that's quite a traditional kind of exciting thing to add. But in this instance, I think that was a bit more down to earth. I think it was a Speedball silver ink that I did that with. But the reason I went for the lino over printing is just it's easier to cut it in lino. Later in the filming, I've asked Will Francis, who is a real expert at fine carving, to come and do a little video with me to talk about his process. And excitingly, he's looking at making plywood, cherry plywood for carving and stuff in the UK. So, you know, I'm going to get him on the show at some point to talk about his more traditional ways of working, and make use of some of his expertise. So that's that one. And then I wanted you to look at a print that I did while
Thanks for joining us, Robert.
Oh, Robert's off, is he? Right. So here I've got a print, let me get this the right way around. It's actually two different prints, and this is Kokodera. This is a moss, a garden in a temple in Japan. It's called the Moss Temple, and oh, did I use, yeah, Jen wants to know, did I use an oil-based or water-based ink over the Japanese woodblock printing? It was oil-based. So Julie's got one more wood question. Is it true that the blocks used with oil-based ink couldn't be used with water-based ink later?
Yes.
Yes. Well, if you are using oil-based ink to do like a traditional Western woodblock, and then you want to use water-based ink to do a water-based traditional woodblock, you'll be fine. However, if you want to use them to do a Japanese woodblock and you've used them to put oil on, no, they won't be fine, because you need the wood free to absorb water, because when you're printing you need it to take in water before you start putting your water-based pigment or your watercolour or gouache or whatever you're using on with the rice paste to make the print. So this print that I was talking about, this is another reduction, a reduction print, but it's a series of different blocks, and as I say, it's actually two entirely different prints that I've cut to fit together, and then when I came to print them I printed them simultaneously so they kind of match up and make one image there, which is it's quite a good exercise. It's difficult, but it really tests your mind. And the other thing this print has got is it has a shadow block. I don't know if you can see there, but everything is in like light or shadow. You can probably see it particularly clearly down at the bottom of the tree trunk. I'm not going to look over it then because I haven't. So I don't know if you can see, but there's sort of areas of shadow and areas of light. And what I've done is I've cut a block that goes over the entire picture, which has holes in it, and I've used it to print a transparent shadow. Yeah, you can see it there. Used it to print a transparent shadow layer that goes over the entire block, and that's quite a useful thing about Japanese woodblock that you can do. Sorry, I'm not sure if my questions are freezing or not. They did last time. This is the origami paper that I was talking about, the shiramini. This comes on a roll. So the roll is over 1 metre wide, long. It's 10 metres long and over 1 metre.
1.5 metres
yeah,
wide.
1.5 metres wide. So we get the roll and then we just saw it in half to make it more manageable. And this, yeah, I'm guessing this is 90 gram paper, and this must have probably about 40 layers of printing on it, and you can see it's really, really sturdy stuff. So, you know, washi is fantastic paper. So, right. I've got a question here. In this series, are you making a reduction woodblock? No, I won't in this series, and I tell you for why. Because I really, really have to have my head in the game to do that, because you have to think not just about the reduction print in the block you're working on, but how the reduction across the whole print works in the various blocks. And the idea of trying to do that and speak fluently to camera and work out what film I want Ben to shoot next is like, it's too complicated. I'm not clever enough for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an absolutely classic multiple block Japanese woodblock print for this particular one. But I can show you places where you could do a reduction print with it when we go along, because otherwise it's just going to do my head in. So that's Kokodera in Japan. And one of the things that I really am interested in, or increasingly interested in, with Japanese woodblock is this idea of texture, of the build-up of texture. And I would really, really recommend that you go and look at Japanese printmaking in the 20th century, particularly sort of 40s through to the 70s. There's some really interesting printmaking going on then, and lots of ideas more about textures and more abstraction and feelings like that, and sort of printmaking methods like that. So this idea of kind of building up layers where some of it's to do with how you cut the block, some of it's to do with how you put the print, how you print it, how you put your paint onto it, how you treat the paper. You know, I find that sort of thing quite interesting. So if I show you here, I've got a print. This is just a proof print, so it's nothing precious.
Okay, well, can I have the board just to hold it flat?
So that you can see. Right. Oh, so Angie is pleased that it does my head in to think about reduction, because it does hers in too. I mean, I think the thing about it is that when I found that making these films, which I really love doing, it's not very good filming, and this is what I always feel about live streams. Is like I have to stare off into the distance quite a lot to picture what I'm doing, and I don't know if any of you guys experience this, but if I sort of stop and think, I can actually kind of, it's almost like projecting the image into my head, so I can kind of project it into my head and pull it apart like an expanded drawing, but that involves a lot of me sort of staring mindlessly into the middle distance, and that doesn't make for good videos. So that's why we're not going to try that approach with Japanese woodblock, because you'd just be looking at me. It'd be like watching the film Mr. Turner. I don't know if any of you saw that film, where a lot of the time Timothy Spall was just like staring into space. So that's what I would be doing. So no, I'm going to try and be a bit more dynamic than that. So this one is of Bilsdale in Yorkshire, and with this series, I did this for Bills and Rye Gallery, really, who are up in Yorkshire, and we went and stayed with the gallery owner Nick, and went out drawing. And so it's quite a different sort of approach, and I wanted to really push that idea of kind of almost slightly abstract and lots of texture. So rather than using wood grain, here I'm actually cutting into the blocks and printing one on top of the other. So if I show you here are two of the blocks that make up, if you could hold them up. So there are two of the blocks that I'm using, which Ben seems to be feeding into the camera at the moment. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm using that little tiny...
You'll see that anyway.
Right, yeah, good, because we've got a delay on our cameras, but I'll show you. So I'm using my tiny little Japanese V gouges and little round gouges there. Those are the ones I'm using. What's he done? Has he switched you off? Yeah, little gouges like that. And then you can see how that's creating those textures there. So you can actually get really quite nice feelings of movement and stuff.
You can't really see those, unfortunately.
Can't see. Oh, you can't see the gouges.
No, not really.
Yeah, there you can see what that effect. Yeah. Yeah, it's. I do a lot of thinking. I mean, it's sort of like I say, it doesn't really show up on films or YouTube Live or Instagram, but a lot of my time is just spent like staring into nothing while I work things out in my head, because a lot of the drawings that I do and the prints that I design, yes, I go out and I do drawings and I take photographs and stuff like that, but most of it's landscape in my head. So things get changed round, and one of the films that I've done is about the design drawing for this new print, and here it is, how this has been through many incarnations and several prints, and the idea of this background hill and then a foreground, you see that quite a lot in my work, and it's something that I revisit quite a lot. So it's sort of one drawing that I did years ago, and then I kind of make up ideas around it. So this is the latest incarnation, and it's entirely dictated by that mad plank of yew that I'm going to use. So the plank of yew creates the gully here for the waterfall, and that kind of made me design the picture this way, because that's the shape the wood was. Oh right, somebody wants to look at those gouges. Yes, it's good to have the off-screen help, the lovely assistant. Did that work? I hope that
Hopefully
worked.
that will
Yeah.
work better.
Oh, actually, holding things up to the camera, I've just had a thought. I was amused by the fact that we have bamboo in the garden. So
Still not very sharp.
yeah. So here is my my nicest baron that I'm going to be using for printing with, for burnishing the prints. And this was made by Goto-san in Japan, who makes barons. And he did a class with us while I was in Japan year before last, and he's made this lovely baron that I use. And I just thought I'd show you the bamboo, because at the moment our bamboo is shedding its outer leaves, which it does at this time of year. So this is like the bamboo. It's all right, I've got one here. This is the size that our garden is, and this is the size that you need to cover a baron. So I think our bamboo is a bit pathetic. So that's just the new covering for the baron. You can see people sometimes ask me, you know, what this is made of. So it's just bamboo like that. Right, okay, so Deborah Stratford is looking for a chisel to make the Kento. Yeah, Kento chisels, if you want an authentic one, you'll get one at Hand Printed, you'll get one at Intaglio in London, one of these jobs, Japanese baron. My one is really wonky now, actually, but you will find them there. I'm just trying to think, Lawrence's, I don't know whether they'd have one.
Intaglio definitely.
Intaglio do, and I know Shirley at Hand Printed's got them. So when I teach a class, I actually teach people. I don't have like 10 of these because they aren't cheap. And I use a woodworking chisel for students, which is the same width, and it also has a short handle, which is called a butt end chisel, which we bought from a tool company. And it's a much heavier thing, but it does the job. I mean, it's perfectly all right, but a proper Kento chisel's lovely. Right, so I've got a question here. Is it how are you pronouncing that? Buckhouse?
Sorry?
The latest question. The name.
Buckhouse?
Buckhouse?
No.
Buckhouse? I don't know.
Apologies.
Apologies, yeah, we're not very good with names. If you tuned in before, you know that. So it's... Right, he's asking, is the transfer made solely with the baron? I'm amazed at the tonalities you get in the prints and thinking about the pressure you have to put. Yes, it is just done with the baron, except things like wood grain, and I'll show you this, I sometimes print with my hand rather than a baron, because you get a better result on a raised wood grain where you can feel your way and push the paper down into the wood grain. But I have a variety of barons, so this is kind of a medium one, but I have a lightweight one for doing fine detail. and I have a ball bearing one for really heavy paper and large areas. For this project, I won't use the ball bearing one, it'll be too heavy. And frankly, the ball bearing Baron, I don't find I need it for use it when I'm printing on washi paper, because washi is really sensitive. But the ball bearing Baron comes into its own for the great big prints that I've done on Western paper. Especially if you look behind me and you can see on the back wall there's a couple of prints there which are enormous, like metre wide prints on Western paper. Ball bearing Baron, fantastic for that. But the subtlety of it, a lot of that is how to do with how you ink it, how wet the wood is, how you balance the paint and the rice paste when you're putting it down. So you can achieve like loads of different effects that you just can't really, you can sort of mimic them in lino cut, but it's not the same. And
apologies, Shumena, for getting your name wrong.
Right. Yeah. Apologies too. So yeah, so that's one of the things that I want to show in this series, is like how amazingly subtle Japanese woodblock can be. I'm looking at myself on camera, I'm getting redder and redder, I'm sorry, it's very English skin that goes absolutely scarlet in the heat. So yeah, you can get the most amazing subtleties with Japanese woodblock, which is why I chose to do a print where the background is going to be almost invisible, and then the foreground is going to be quite punchy. So I'm also experimenting. I've got some new paints from Michael Harding. He makes oil paints. He's very well known for oil paints, but he's got some watercolours he's just brought out. So I'm quite excited to try these new paints, and I'll look at different watercolours and things. I tend always to use watercolour, but you can use gouache, you can use powdered pigment. When I drag Will in front of the camera to talk to him, he only works with traditional powdered pigments, so he's quite interesting to discuss that with.
But his girlfriend is an expert in pigments.
Yeah, his girlfriend is she paints icons. And on vellum, traditional painting on vellum, so she's like the pigment expert. So yeah, so that's sort of his equivalent of the useful partner. It's like the talented Mr. B. It's always good to have a partner who's got talent. So Christine is asking, is there a difference between stainless steel ball bearing Baron and the nylon type one?
Durability.
Right. Well, I'm glad you've answered that, because I've never tried the nylon one. I don't.
They're like very similar to the black ones you use for teaching.
Oh right, okay. So
knobby ones.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick dash to get a couple of Barons out to show you. I'll just show you. Right. Okay. I've tidied up the studio recently, so thankfully I can find everything at the moment. So there's my ball bearing Baron, and that is a plastic one that I teach with. And I'm assuming when you say the nylon one, you mean the white one that's got like a cover over the top of it. The thing about Japanese woodblock, and the more you do Japanese woodblock and the better you get at it, the more you realise this, is that there's a lot of communication going on between the print and you as you print it, and the better quality your Baron, kind of the more feedback you get about how the print is, how you're impressing the print, which sounds a bit airy-fairy, but it's really true. When I was in Japan, I had a go with a Hon Baron, so that's like the royalty of Barons, and it was amazing. It was very, very different from, for example, a Baron like this, which will do the job, and I'm not complaining about them, they're amazingly good, especially for the price, but you don't get any feedback because it's very rigid, like so. So the same goes for a ball bearing Baron, and it depends what you're printing. If it's something which needs the pressure, then ball bearing Baron's really good.
I've not come across a nylon
Oh,
ball
the
bearing
nylon ball
barrel.
bearing one. No, no. In that case, we've not come across that. That's a new one to us, so I don't know about that. If you guys are out there thinking of investing in a ball bearing barron, what I'd say is when we bought this one, we hadn't really sort of thought of the fact that as you do your printing, dust and fluff starts to get inside it, and it builds up, and the ball bearings stop moving as flexibly as they should. Now, we've resolved that by me hurling it on the floor by mistake and it exploding, so that we were able to pick all the fluff out as we ordered some more ball bearings, and then poor Ben had to stick it all back together. And I've actually managed to do that twice, which is, I wouldn't recommend it as a kind of cleaning method, but that's what's happened. So if you get ball bearing barron, there are ones on the market that you can just unscrew and take apart and clean, and that's probably a good idea, because then you can get all the gross out and everything stays mobile. So that's that one. But the thing about Japanese woodblock is that it can be what you want it to be. I think that possibly there's a lot of mystique about the process, and there's a sort of reverence for the fact that it's an amazing historical process, and everybody knows prints, you know, that are absolutely marvellous from the Edo period and stuff like that. But it is just another print method, and it's what you want to make of it. You know, what I do is very different from what another person does and another person. It's just like lino cut. So I can only show you what I know. So there are loads of different versions out there. So I wouldn't hold back. I would really play and experiment, because what I do won't necessarily suit what somebody else wants to do, and it's a really flexible method. So what I'd really like to do in this series of films is just show you how flexible it is. I mean, at this stage with this design that I'm working on, I don't know how many blocks I'm going to use, or quite how, I don't even really know how I'm going to transfer all of the drawing to the wood to cut it. Some of it I'm going to do straightforward carbon transfer. I've actually got another one on the back here. I've stuck a piece of wood over a piece of paper over to protect it, that I can show you here. So here's one I haven't cut yet, and that's just done with carbon paper, pretty much like I do the lino. But I think what I might do is to cut this one as a line block, and then print that line block onto paper, and then use that printed paper to transfer onto the wood for the shadow block, because if I print this onto paper, it means that I can paint onto that piece of paper and then transfer it onto the block. So that's a process that I might do. Right, so either nobody's speaking to me or my feed has blocked. So yeah, ask me some questions, because that would be good. But this one, I'm not going to religiously cut it to exactly meet the lines. I'm going to be quite creative about how I cut this, probably.
No, I haven't had any.
No? Oh, yeah. So you can use both sides of the, yeah, absolutely, Andrew Hatchett. You can use both sides of the plywood, and it's very thrifty, because you use both sides. And also, I expect you noticed that you can also get lots of different blocks onto the same piece.
Thank you,
of wood.
Rosie.
Yeah, I'd like to think you're all in awe. I think you've all gone off to have a glass of wine. I think. Have you got any sense in this heat?
Oh, gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic.
With loads of ice.
I don't even like gin and tonic. I don't know why I'm saying that. You can see you can get lots of different blocks onto the same piece of material, because you're printing with brushes. So I'm going to be printing with brushes, and when you print with a brush, you can control where you put it. So as long as you've got, basically what you need is space for your registration, so space for your Kento. If I turn it the right way up, you can maybe see. So I need space for the two little shelves to prop the printing paper on and space for the block. And as long as you've got space for that and it fits on the wood, it doesn't matter where you put it or what angle, you can pack them on. So it's a bit like, I guess it's a bit like dressmaking in that respect, in that you can fit lots of pieces into a small area, or at least the sort of dressmaking I used to do with my mum when I was young, because she was a professional dressmaker and she never believed that you needed as much fabric as the pattern, so I used to spend time piecing things together. Oh, Claire's having cider. Now I'm jealous. Yeah, I wouldn't mind a really, really dry cider, cold dry cider. That would be very nice.
Glynis would like to see the Kentos.
Oh, the Kentos, yeah, of course. Let me see. Show. Oh, I'll start that back over. Let's move that again. Show the drawn ones. And here's ones that I've got. Yep, there you go. Right, there's two freshly cut ones. So we've just filmed cutting Kento, and I also have some cheeky stick-on Kentos, which I'll show you in a second. My lovely assistant is pointing. Right, Nicholas is drinking tea, which all the British people who are on the stream will know is the best thing for very hot weather. So Nicholas says, is your thinking about colour the same for woodblock as line, or do you have a different palette? That is a really good question. I'll talk about this in a second. That's really good. I think probably for Japanese woodblock it's more variable. It's a wider range of colours, probably. They're still quite subtle, but you can get such a lovely mix. Now I've gone over to using the washi. There's a kind of vibrancy about the paper too, which really makes colours glow. And you can get this sort of very clean transparency with it. So you can get these, I could do this in lino, but it's easier to get these very clear, very transparent colours in woodblock. So I would say my colours are probably a bit more vibrant in the woodblock than they are on the lino, although it's a very similar sort of palette. So yeah, Ben was going to show you, but I'll show you. These are cheeky little stick-on Kentos. Right, okay. Yeah, Claire wants to know if I have a wider range of colours because they're small layers. Yeah, probably, Claire, I think so. And also because it's multi-block process and it's watercolour that I use. You have the white of the paper behind it. Instead with lino, it's layer on layer on layer of ink. Whereas with the Japanese woodblock, you have a colour with white paper behind it. So it's a purer sort of colour. Jenny wants to know, when you say you place each block wherever on the sheet you want, do you have to take the grain direction into account? Like when you're placing pattern pieces for dressmaking. Really good point. With this Sheena plywood, no, it honestly doesn't matter. You can see it's all over the place because the grain isn't going to show. However, if you are using wood with grain and you do want it to show, then yeah, obviously you have to position your piece so that the grain issues to best effect. But if you are cutting something a block that is very long and thin, so let's imagine that you are going to cut a block which is going to do all the stems of grass or something like that, then I would always recommend that you put your long thin block going with the grain, so when you cut it there's far less chance of the wood just splintering and falling apart because you've got the long fibres with the long design rather than going across lots of short fibres. So but if you have, I'm going to cut some fairly delicate stuff, but if I was going to cut something that was really really, really fine line, then I'd really want to be doing it in cherry or maple or poplar maybe. Still ideally plywood, but a much harder, crisper wood, because you can get thin with Sheena. I mean, this is Sheena, and you can see my little trees here. They're quite fine, but you can't. It's tricky to cut that fine. It's a bit. The wood's a bit woolly. So if I was going any finer than that, then yeah, I would really want to be cutting on something harder. So Deborah's asking about brushes. Yeah, printing brushes. Can you pass me one of the printing brushes? So when it comes to the printing, thank you. You don't use rollers, you use brushes. So Ben is just getting an assortment. That'll do. It's all right, love. Really, that will do. It's just I'm reaching for all my brushes. So yeah, I've got an assortment of printing brushes here. So rather than using rollers, you use a brush and the paint, and that's how come.
Are you ready for this?
Oh right, okay. Bit of brush.
We're going on a little tour of the studio here.
Just want to show you the brushes, and you can see all the brushes, the sort of there. And also the ones over there, because I want to show you my mum's shoe brushes that I chopped up. So if you look on the far wall, you can see the ones that are all funny shapes hanging at the top there are my mum's old shoe brushes. When we cleaned the house out, I thought that it would be, rather than throwing them away, it would be a nice way of remembering an eminently practical woman to use them as print brushes. So yeah, Odette's off. Bye bye, Odette. And yeah, because you're using brushes to print with, it means you can control where you put them. So you can ink up in a specific area, or indeed you can ink up different areas of the same block in different colours. So it just is very, very controlled. So I could have this piece of turf here if I wanted to. I could have it going from, I don't know, lemon yellow into 3 or 4 different colours down to the bottom if I wanted to. So it's very painterly. Specific, oh right, well the brushes, they do have names, and I can't remember off the top of my head what they... Burushi, yeah, that's really helpful. So this one is, this is deer hair. This is like the hair I like to print with best, and this is specifically summer deer hair because the bristles are better in summer, and it is quite bristly. And the reason I like deer hair to print with is because it doesn't clag up. The brushes stay dry for longer, and so they print better for longer. Traditionally, normally they're more likely to be horsehair. Can you pass me that one at the very end there? At the very end, the other one, yeah. So Ben's going to pass me a horsehair one. So that's tail hair, that's horse tail hair there.
Goat one?
No. And then you have, this is winter horse, so this is the furry winter coat of a horse rather than its tail or mane hair, and that is very, very soft, and it clags up with paint really quickly, so it's not good for lots of long, you know, doing lots of prints like this one is, but this is really, really brilliant when you want to do like these very soft shadings. A soft brush like that is really good for that. Glynis wants to know, how did you clean your mum's brushes of the wax polish? I used denatured alcohol, which stripped it out, because when I got them I was a bit, you know, I had no idea how to do it, and I actually searched on the internet, and somebody had actually taken shoe brushes and stripped the polish out of them. So yeah, denatured alcohol will do that. So yeah, you can also get brushes that are hog bristle, and Somebody was asking me on one of the feeds about vegetarian friendly options. If you don't, well, vegan, I guess, because if you don't like using animal products. And this is where it gets really, really difficult, because the point about animal hair is that when these print brushes, the hairs have been split, they've been burnt and then rubbed to split them, and they are very good for spreading a thin layer of paint, and that because they're animal hair they behave in a certain way. If you had synthetic brushes, I'm not sure they would give you quite as good a result, because I don't know that they would behave with the paint and the rice in the same way. I guess, I mean, I don't know much about painting, but I'm guessing it's a bit like animal hair brushes for watercolour, but I could be wrong there. I've never seen synthetic print brushes used in Japan, so if anybody else has, do set me right, but I suspect this is one of the instances where animal products is going to give you the best result. So that's the brushes.
Megan has a question about the tools. She's talking about the liner cut tools used for woodblock.
The file.
Because you do it the other way around.
Yeah. So no, I don't have. I always pronounce it wrong. Is it file? I don't have their tools. I have like similar tools that I use for lino. I don't ever use these on woodblock. They just don't seem to. I don't think that they work as well. But that's not to say you can't. I know plenty of people who do use their lino tools on woodblock. I think because I'm really, really spoilt and I have a big box of Japanese tools, I don't tend to do it. I tend to use these Japanese ones, but there's no reason why not. And as long as they're razor sharp, they should work. But what you do need is the hangito. You need the knife to cut the outline, the one that fits in your fist. So you need a hangito, and I'll do a film about tools anyway, so I'll talk about these. So I have various different ones that do different things and are sharpened in different ways to do different things. So like I have one this one only does straight lines, and some of them have got like much more delicate points than others. So alright, Zandra's cut her hair. You should have kept your hair. Yeah, I've never made a brush out of. Actually, I missed a trick because I've had all mine cut off now. But I would think human hair works quite nicely. We saw an amazing bit of human hair in Japan when we were there last time. It was a temple, and there was like a massive rope, and the rope was about like this thick around, and it was human hair because growing hemp had been outlawed, it had been made illegal, and so they weren't able to make the hemp rope necessary for using in the temple construction. So the faithful gave their hair, and they made this enormous rope out of human hair instead, and it was really amazing thing to see. Close up on the knives. You want the close up on these. I get my lovely assistant to do that. Right, let's hand them to you in a way that you're not going to cut yourself. Okay. There you go. So those are my hangitos, those were my hangitos. And you can maybe see the blades there. When we do the film, we'll show them better, so that you can see them. Don't know where that other one's gone. And also I'll talk to you about sharpening them as well, and how to sharpen them. So yeah, you can get away with, and also the other one, I do use these power grip ones for cutting wood block. They work a treat. Just found my other knife. And we'll talk about sharpening and how to maintain them and stuff like that. So
bye bye, Brenda.
Bye, Brenda.
We should go too.
We should, yeah. So are we at time? Oh crikey. So getting tools in the USA. Are McLean's still shipping? I would imagine McLean's is still shipping. I only know McLean's.
The problem will be getting the tools from Japan to McLean's.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I know that Awagami are having nightmare time trying to ship at the moment. So yeah, if you are in a situation where you just can't, you're really struggling to get tools, if you can get yourself a hangito, that's really important. But you can kind of bodge the rest, to be perfectly honest, and work with what you've got. You can certainly use household chisel, a DIY chisel, instead of a fancy kento chisel to cut kentos. So I would focus on the all-important hangito knife. I don't know if you could improvise for something for that, but certainly lino tools would be perfectly adequate. So delivery of stuff is getting tricky at the moment, and I know with paper and things like that, it's very difficult for everyone to get things delivered. So what I'll try and do in these films is to suggest ways of improvising things if I can think of them, so that you can kind of carry on a bit like sharpening with the scourer, with the kitchen scouring powder. So yeah, I think that's it for now, and we should make a move. So I'll have another live stream in a couple of weeks when we're further into the films, and I have something else to show you, and I can answer your questions then. So do remember that I'm not posting on social media anymore, the whole films on social media anymore, so you have to go to YouTube to watch them. But I guess you know that because you're on YouTube now. So yeah, we did. Oh, Julie, we'd have been at a workshop together. That's a bummer. Next year, maybe. Fingers crossed. That would be good. Good. So, yeah, have a good weekend. Have a cold drink if you're anything like as hot as me. And I will catch up with you guys in a couple of weeks, live stream. And the films will be coming out Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, like the lino cut ones.
Thank you, everybody.
Good. Thank you, everybody. And take care and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you all in a fortnight.
Yes.